Hang on, we've got a councillor, we've got a problem. Councillor. Joe got the Joe got the low chair.
There's one over here if you want to use that one.
Just throw it over there.
Larry must have moved. Okay, councillors, it's gone 4:30. Have your attention, please. I'd like to open the meeting at 4:32. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Housekeeping, if in the event we're asked to evacuate, we exit through the two glass doors in the corridor, turn right out the main doors and across on the footpath and await further instructions. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Persons attending or speaking in public forum should refrain from making defamatory statements. We have no speakers in public forum today. So the next item is a statement of ethical obligations. And the taken has been read. Next item on the agenda is the attendance and any apologies. Do we have any apologies? No apologies. The next item on the agenda, I would ask everyone to be upstanding for the expressions of sympathy, please. We pause with a moment's silence for the following. Michael Perry, Dawn Morgan, Andrew McFadden, Algus Gouroulis, Lorraine Beale, Cynthia Brown, Graham Fortham, Thomas McIntosh, Carmen Percival, Paul Burns, Valerie Owen, Rita White, Hazel Taylor, Kevin Bradford, Maureen Beer, Trevor Irving, Frank Tewin, Peter Farrell, Dennis Jobson, Neville Woods, Timothy Roberts, Howard Halls, Louise Gibbons, Francis Thompson, Frank, I presume, Claire McCarthy, Stuart Apps, Peter Luff, Mark White, Kevin Manwaring, Glennis North, Peter Baker, Malcolm Nielsen, Helen Malloy, Eileen Sargent, William Causer, Robert Palmer, Glenn Percival, Philip Holmes, Patrick Steele, John Palmer, Hazel Palmer, and Anthony Poggi. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Next item on the agenda is the confirmation of minutes. They're in front of you. Councillors, do I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of the minutes? Moved, Councillor Blackwell, seconded, Councillor Mackie, sorry, Joe, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Next item on the agenda is any disclosures of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest? Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I've got one at 12.16 and I'll step out of the room for the discussion and the vote.
Thank you, Councillor.
Mayor Ingram, I also have a declaration of conflict of interest at 12:28, 25:31 and I will stay in the room, but I won't participate in the discussion or the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodd. No further disclosures. Thank you. No mayoral minute. Mayoral's report is there in front of you, councillors. I think I've covered off most of it. There were some meetings that I missed out, but what's there is there. You have a mover and a second. Would that be accepted, please? Councillor Davis, Councillor Flannery. All those in favour? Councillors, just before I go any further to the next item, with councillors' diaries, I'd just like to touch on a couple of meetings that relate to the devastating storm that the Harden-Murrumborough community suffered. And again, pay my thanks on behalf of council and the community to everyone involved in the recovery, the RFS, the SES, police, the New South Wales Reconstruction Authority, the volunteers, the teachers who couldn't go to work because the school was closed, so I went down the street and were helping store owners clean up. A great effort. And the next people I'd like to heap praise on, and as people would really know that I'm only too happy to call out what I call poor performance, so it's only fair that the accolades go to all Hilltops Council staff members involved. The recovery and the clean-up was a monumental job. No one shirked it. Everyone chipped in, went way up above normal expectations and done a great job. And that's the outdoor staff. And to the indoor staff, the same goes. I spoke with the general manager very early on that Monday morning and said, we need to be all over this. And from that moment on, he was, and so was his staff, because we wanted the damage report to go to the relevant authorities so that we could get declared. And that was done, and done in very quick time and very professionally, as was vindicated by the area being declared a Commonwealth State Natural Disaster Area, and opened up all the doors that it did. The next people I'd like to mention is a couple of fellow mayors and friends and who contacted me to offer help or assistance in any way, and that was Phyllis Miller, who's the Mayor of Forbes and also the President of Local Government New South Wales, contacted me, along with our good friend, the Mayor of Temora, Rick Furman, who is also the Chair of the Country Mayors Association, who touched base with me to see how things were going. So thank them for reaching out. Our local member, Steph Cook, who beat me to site on the Monday morning, has worked tirelessly to contact everyone she could along the way to make things happen, whether it be with the preschool or any other part of it that she could be involved with. A great effort. Also, Michael McCormick, our federal member, who when some things like the Commonwealth Bank went down and matters that were dealt with by the federal government, he'd been in contact with me constantly also and did everything he could to help us. And that leads me up to probably the last point I'd mention on it is the meeting I held with Minister Dibb, the Minister for Emergency Services in Sydney, alongside our local member Steph Cook and representatives from New South Wales Reconstruction Authority last Thursday in Sydney. And Minister Dibb also asked that I pass on to our staff his sincere thanks and congratulations on the manner in which the paperwork to be declared natural disaster area was done and handled. In his words, this doesn't happen this quick. This is a rarity, that everything is done in such a short space of time. I said, I'll be only too happy to pass your congratulations on to all those people. He also mentioned, and I appreciate it, and spoke to him about the bipartisan approach that was taken to this event between state, federal government and how it's been handled. The New South Wales Reconstruction Authorities, they're called now, will continue to return to Harden. They're not walking out the door and saying the adrenaline rush is over. They will be back there weekly until we deem it's not necessary, just to make sure they catch up with anyone who might have missed out on some help they needed or weren't too sure about going to see about it at the time. So they're going to be present, have a presence in Harden on a weekly basis until we decide that it appears that everyone's got everything under control. So what's been a terrible time for a lot of our community, and especially some of the elderly people I spoke to when I was over there, and it makes you feel a bit useless. You sort of couldn't do much, but As a council, we've done everything we could to progress it with as much speed as we could. So I thank everyone for their help, and contributions to other councillors around the room are also involved. So thank you. Okay, that's me. Next item on the agenda is the councillors' reports. Most of them are there, but as usual, I'll go around the room to see if you want to add anything to them or speak to any. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you. I'd like to add, sorry, Yvette, the 19th of February I went to the Maringo Community Association, and the 24th of February I went to a Department of Health information session over at Cootamundra about the change to the pathology services.
Councillor Langford.
Yes, meetings as minuted, and just add yesterday the waste strategy communication community meeting in the town hall at Young.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Unfortunately, I didn't put any in. I have emailed Yvette since, and they'll be recorded in the next.
They're up on the screen.
Oh, thank you. There was the 5th of December, the minis opened. You don't want me to read them all, do you?
No, we've
No.
got them.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Blackwell.
As minuted, but just to add a meeting with yourself, Mr. Mayor, for the 29th of January.
Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As minuted, do we put in every meeting we feel like going to, or is it council-related business?
Thanks, Councillor Flannery. We've had a discussion with some people in regard to that matter, and it's been addressed, so thank you.
Okay. Look, meeting as minuted, a number of issues regarding the storm damage in Harden, Gallon progress, the VPA meeting, which was held 2 days ago. And I'll have a bit more to say on the public announcements.
Thank you. Councillor.
As minuted, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackie.
As well as there was a fundraiser for the Borough House on the 15th of February, the 2 young waste on the 20th. I don't know if over there, it's stages on the water because I've forgotten. Maringo waste info and the young waste information.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
As minuted.
Thank you. Councillor Foreman.
I have half a dozen to add, but Yvette, have you captured them since I gave you the list? That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder? They be accepted. Moved Councillor Blackwell, seconded Councillor Dodd. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Next item we move on to is the General Manager's report. Item 25/04, executive meetings attended. It's there to receive and note the executive staff report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Foreman, thank you. Second to Councillor Blackwell. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors.
Mr. Mayor, recognition. Community recognition.
Have I jumped an item? I have. It would appear that I've jumped an item somewhere with community recognitions. So
Mr Mayor, could I nominate Vinnie's at Young? I'd like to nominate them for their amazing lunch that they put on for the residents that were either unfortunately unable to have a family lunch or just decided they wanted to come to the Christmas Day lunch. It was attended by approximately 80 people. I attended and was blown away by the success of the day, and a huge thanks to all the volunteers, New South Wales Police who also attended, and 2 of the main organisers, Sharon McCoy and Crystal Reed. So I'd just like to nominate Vinnie's. Thank you.
thank you, councillor. Any other community recognition? Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I would like to, I guess, back up your comments about a big thank you to all the staff involved in the Harden storm damage, the outdoor staff, those who came from far and wide to help, the indoor staff, to the general manager for making it all happen. It certainly, I think the town is genuinely still in shock. There's a huge amount of clean-up work to do. There's buildings that may never be habitable again, depending on the owners, and council really got their backside into gear. I'd like to thank you for your support, Mr Mayor. It was noticed, and the the actions you played in making things happen. The two local members, Steph and Michael McCormick. Separately, I'd like to thank the Director of Planning for his assistance with, and like you said earlier, there can be often criticism, but the Director of Planning helped me with a matter for a friend who passed away, and the burial was a matter where three family members desired to be buried together, and it's, I guess, not outside the policy, but it wasn't easy to do, but he made it happen, and I'm thankful to him, and the family are thankful.
Thank you for that. Any other scheme? Okay. Someone like to move and second that they be accepted? Move Councillor Langford, seconded Councillor Dodd. All those in favour? Thank you. My apologies, Council. I jumped one page over. We went to the General Manager's report. Did I have a mover and a seconder?
Did you did?
We did. Did we put it to the vote? We put it to the vote. Thank you very much. Then we'll move on to the next one, which is 12/05, the Financial Improvement Strategy, February 2025, progress update. And the recommendation is to receive the information. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Davis, seconded Councillor Douglas. Thank you. Any questions in regard to that item? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Takes us along to 25/06, the cash investment and unrestricted cash report as of 31 December 2024.
I'll move that, and I'll move the
Together? Councillor Flannery is moving both cash investment reports together. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Douglas, thank you. Do I have any questions on regards to that? I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll just move over there and go to item 2508. Outstanding rates and charges and sundry debtors report as of 31 December 2024. Recommendation is receive and note the report. I have a mover, Councillor Dodd, thank you. Second, Councillor Douglas. Any questions in regard to that report?
I'd just like, oh, actually, no, it's the next.
Sorry, I missed that.
It's the next one.
Okay, all right, thank you. We'll move on to all those in favour. Sorry, Councillor Dodd threw me up. Thank you. So we're on 2509, outstanding rates and charges and sundry debtors as of 31 January 2025. To receive and note the report. To have a mover. Mover, Councillor Dodd. Seconded, Councillor Blackwell. Thank you. Any questions or queries?
I'd just like to note that the over 5 years rates outstanding has reduced, and usually, you know, every time there's a little bit of a shift, and it's not a big reduction, but it's still a reduction, that we are actually slowly bringing that
Thank you for that.
outstanding down.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwell.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. If the relevant, I don't see Norm, but are they relevant staff
You're
here?
talking about the director. There'll be people here to answer your questions. What are your questions you've got,
Great.
Councillor?
Just with regards well, first of all, the water rates. There's a fair chunk of people, close to half, are more than 4 months overdue on their water. Is that standard, or is that an anomaly we should be concerned about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, water has been an issue with people paying water. It's an area that we are working on, and we are also investigating the water restrictors for those people that do not pay or do not enter into an agreement.
Thanks.
Thank you. No other questions? I'll put that report. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. I come to item 25/10, the quarterly budget review, December 2024. And the recommendation, receive and note the report, adopt the recommended variations to Hilltops Council 24-25 budget as set out in December 2024 Hilltops Council quarterly budget review. To start with, we've got a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Douglas, seconded Councillor Flannery. Do we have any questions on the QBR? Councillor Flannery.
Look, I've got a few questions, but the director's not here, and I did miss the workshop, so some of them may have already been
So here we go.
answered. Material contract budgeting allocation increased by 0.3 of a million, which is made up of the lease of a radio tower. I would have thought the radio towers not a materials contract, is it? I would have thought it's a lease. Is that a correct allocation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's unfortunately it's suspended into that group by its nature.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you. Year-to-date materials expenditure includes the following annual amount. The plant vehicle registration insurance costs for the year of 2.1 million, hence 1 million expenditure relates to the balance of the year. Is that a variation or is it just a note? It wasn't clear to me whether it's...
I understand through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that's just a highlight that the number is larger because we've paid it, but we've paid it for the full year, so we
So
don't
we're
proportion it over the
Right.
quarters.
So it's been... Okay. Yeah. The stormwater drainage projects for Young, a reduction of 2.7 million, increase in the restoration of the current year value by 0.6 million, and increase in the plant replacement allocation. Could that be explained, please? And a reduction, so under capital grants, it notes that there's a reduction of 1 million from the Young stormwater drainage project. And then it goes down further down it says that there's 2.7 million reduction. So through you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. That reduction is relating to a delayed start to that project. So you'll be aware council recently went to tender for construction of the Young Stormwater Trunk project. That's still on track to be completed by the end of the calendar year. However, that adjustment reflects a reduced expenditure on that project for this financial year.
So it'll just be rolled over at the end of the year.
Yes, that's right.
Question for probably the general manager or the director. Do we have detail, or is it possible to get the external restrictions of 36.8 million and internal restrictions of 5.2 million? Could they be, I have asked before, if they could be listed in our QBR, so we've got details of what the restrictions are?
Yes, based upon when they're reconciled, some of them may not move and they may only be reconciled annually, but in the main, yes, we can add that to the QBR.
That'd be appreciated, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Is there any other questions? Councillor Blackwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps a slight change of pace from Councillor Flannery's $1 million questions. On the library, we're only spent about 58% of that budget. Is it good? Because close to $28,000 unspent. Item 140 on the big tables. The question is, does that carry over if we don't spend? It's allocated to books and resources capital. If we don't spend that this year, does that roll over, or does that money come back to council at the end of the year?
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll pass to the Director of Corporate and Community.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the money is spent throughout the year, and sometimes it just kind of equals out at the end. So it's not always spent in the same quarter, but that amount will be spent. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. Back to Councillor
Yep,
Flannery.
another couple of questions. The investing funds flow, so we're page 1 of 21 on the spreadsheets. There's a proposed adjustment on the asset sales, which I'm assuming, well, I actually haven't got a clue, but there's a proposed adjustment of 462,877. Year-to-date sales of 496,063, which I assume is machinery or plant. What the proposed adjustment make up or concern?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I may go to our management accountant, who has that detail for the 400,000.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's obviously a plant replacement program that we've done the adjustment for during the course of the last quarter. You are correct in the assumption that they are the sales that we dispose of those particular assets, and council would have resolved on the other items of plant that have caused an increase in that reserve to be moved and transferred in. A full listing of those plant can be provided to you if you require that.
Okay, could I get it for the next meeting? It's just the number in question, Simon, is that 462. It's just got a proposed adjustment of asset sales. It's a positive number, so it's just
As you do, as you bring your asset, you actually sell that.
yeah.
There's a
it's
corresponding entry down below of a written down value as well, which is the disposal of the book value of the asset. So, but we can do a discussion on that if you require further detail on that plant.
Yep, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, must be my turn. The Director of Infrastructure will probably be the gentleman that would need to address my question. On page 78, which is a bit hard to read on a small document, but under roads, and the first numbers I mentioned is local roads sealed. And if you have a look at that, councillors, you've got 460, item 461 and item 462 for the three former LGAs, and you will see that one former LGA has only had 5% of its budget allocated up until the 31st of December. So I do realise it's the 25th or 6th of February, so there may be a lot of work done in those 2 months to use up some of those budgets. What caught my eye was the next numbers down below that on the urban road seals, and that same former LGA has only had 3% of its budget spent in 6 months. So my question to the Director, I guess, is, having mentioned this to you, are you confident that those funds will be able to be utilised and the work done in this financial year?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am confident that that work will be done and the funds expended this financial year. As we discussed, we tend to work intensively in one area and then progress on to another area. We've done quite a bit of work in that former local government area since the end of December, so I'm confident that we'll complete that work.
Thank you. My second question is in regard to surprise gravel resheeting budgets. And I note that in that same former LGA area that 70% of the budget has been spent in the first 6 months. I'm just wondering if how the schedule's going and if we're going to need more finance allocated to that gravel resheeting fund, or we're going to manage with what's there, because I'd hate to see some of the good work that's been done come undone.
Absolutely. So yes, that budget, I believe, is sufficient. You'll see we've got a fair bit to go in the other areas in terms of resheeting. Along with our other work, that should see us through to the end of financial year.
Thank you very much. If there's another question, Councillor
Sorry,
Blackwell?
one more from me. Just yeah, perhaps the Director of Infrastructure is probably the person to ask. Can you provide an update on expenditure around the Jugiong pool upgrade and whether that's progressing as it should? Like, and at what stage is that at, and do we expect those funds to be spent all within this financial year?
Yes, we do. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Jugiong pool upgrade was recently completed and open to the public. We haven't had a formal opening as such, but yes, the work's complete.
And so the remaining funds there will, because it says we only spent a bit over half of the funds that are budgeted.
Yes, and that was to the end of December.
Okay.
So further work has been done since then. Obviously, we opened in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So in the intervening 1.5 months, we've expended the rest of the budget.
So the whole thing.
Essentially.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the exact figure,
Yeah.
but pretty close to.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Director.
Well, one of the directors just there, in relation to item 600, whatever it is, 42, community services, medical service building capital. I'm assuming that's Kruger Medical Centre. There's an allocation of 12,000. Nothing's been spent. We've had the storm in Harden. is that, well, firstly, is that the Kruger Medical Centre? And secondly, what was that allocation for?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the 12,000 would have just been for general maintenance, not allowing for such an event that we had. But I will pass to the Director of Corporate and Community for an update on the Kruger Medical Centre.
Through
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Mayor, the storm damage for Kruger Medical Centre will be covered by insurance, so that's not coming out of that budget. The money that's allocated, I believe, is for gutters. We have a defect report that we did present to council, and we've now scheduled those works. So it hasn't been spent within this quarter, but it will be spent.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, councillors. I've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Councillors? Yep, it's unanimous. Thank you. We move on to 2511. All right, councillors? We'll move on to 2511, Information System Status, January 2025. Recommendation, receive and note the report. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Dodd, seconded, Councillor Blackwell. Any comments in regard to that item?
I'd just like to say thank you for including an updated Gantt chart.
Thank you. Very good. All those in favour? All those in favour? Aye, unanimous. Thank you. We just might hold things for a second. One of our councillors is having a problem with technology. Yeah, you're right. We'll just hold for a moment. We can't go into business if someone's not there.
Councillors' reports just flipped for some reason on the computer.
Told you they're no good.
I just spun mine around, I just hit the circle. Up top. No tech guru, but
Turn it off and turn it back on. It's my limit. I'm sorry.
About the help button.
all else fails.
No, not on the original.
Try yours.
We made it and then we passed it.
Mr. Mayor, we have IT coming down to help with the councillor.
Well, okay, so IT's coming down and we've got another councillor offering up a laptop to see how we go. So we'll keep moving along on to item 25/12,
Why they make paper.
which is the public exhibition of the draft Hilltops Development Control Plan, draft Hilltops Development Assessment Policy, and draft Hilltops Community Participation Plan. And the recommendation is lengthy, councillors, and it's all there which you would have read and undertook. So I'll have a mover and a second. Move, Councillor Foreman. Seconded, Councillor Langford. Thank you. Have any questions in regard to this report? Aye. Councillor Douglas.
Yes, I do. Firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that the director and his team have put into this report to harmonise between Young, Harden and Burrawa. I would just like to highlight that I would like to see in the report it's asking for 10 objections, to move that back to 5 objections. And I would also like to see a change in the notification into notifying adjacent properties to the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Flannery.
Well, just correct, were you moving an amendment to the?
Yes.
Yep, I did.
Sorry,
Oh,
moving
did-
an amendment for
did you want to
those two
second that for
items.
No.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is the recommendation is not changing, but it is changing the content of what is going to be put out. So that is still valid to change it, a tweak to change it from 10 to 5. And
So you wish to have this change voted on and changed before it goes out now, or you're happy for it to go out and then council will debate this matter when it comes back before it's made official?
Can we change it before it goes out?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, my preference would be to make the change now so the community is aware of what you're
Okay.
proposing.
So Councillor Douglas has moved that and I'll second it because I'll speak strongly to it as well. So There's been moved. It's not an amendment, I don't think. It's, let me have a little thought here. It sort of sprung this on me a bit.
If I could just...
It's a foreshadowed, it's a change to what's there. So it flies in the face of it, so it's in direct conflict, so it can't be an amendment.
Well,
I don't think.
so, Mr. Mayor, what it is you're endorsing the policies to go out.
Yep.
Staff have recommended what's within those policies. It's within your remit as councillors to change.
I understand that. It's just how I'm going to put it down here and play it as.
Potentially it could be G, that the above documents be amended so that it is 5 objections, and the change that all adjacent properties be advised. Is that the correct wording, Director?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be sufficient. We would understand the intent of that and would change it accordingly.
For public exhibition.
All right. Let's find the mover of the recommendation, the motion now, and I'm the seconder. I'm happy with that. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Douglas?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that 10 objections would work well for a metropolitan area where you've got more condensed housing. I believe for a rural area, it's a long stretch, and you could be encompassing, hundreds of kilometres in some areas. I also believe that lost my train of thought. Yeah, so that would be good. 10 objections is a lot. And as I said, move that back to 5. And I believe that notifying your neighbour, so you don't wake up one morning and you've got a house being built next door to you, is just clear good practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone like to speak against?
Oh, no.
No, well, anyone like to speak against that? All right.
Well, I will. Just through you, I think that the 10 was actually fine, and if it goes out for submissions, people can actually say that they're unhappy with that. But I know that we've had on occasions, we've had the same house having 4 submissions from the same household. So anyway, but I do agree with part of it where we should probably notify the residents near to the development, just so that people are aware of what's going on next door.
Thank you. Councillor Blackwell?
Yeah,
Speaking for or against?
4.
Thank you.
I agree that 10 is too many. I think it's, works better in a metropolitan area. Just a question for clarification from either Councillor Douglas or the director, or are we talking 5 submissions objecting or 5 submissions total? 5 objections. Yeah, okay.
5 objections in
Okay.
total.
So if we got 6 submissions, 5 of which were against, 1 of which is for, or 6, 4 of which are against, 2 of which are for, like, are we talking 5 people submitting in total or 5 people submitting against the proposal?
So 5 objections only. So if you've got 6 people and 1 was yay, I really like that. That one doesn't count.
It's still 5 objections.
It's just still 5 objections,
Okay, great.
regardless of how many yay. That's good. It's just 5.
Yeah, in which case I am very much in favour of the change.
Thank you, Councillor Blackwell. I'll speak if anyone else would like to speak on the matter. Councillor Langford. No, the director can ask him yet. Councillor Langford.
Just a comment. This is going out on public exhibition, isn't it? Very shortly. The only thing I would think is maybe the developers and builders in the local region should be approached directly rather than relying on the Facebook or the council website. That's all. The normal people who you get the majority of development applications for.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. I'll speak in favour of the council's amended recommendation. I'd like to see it absolutely left like it was. 4 was the number, but 5's been put up by my fellow councillor, so I'll wear that. Councillors, we've got a document there, I don't know how many pages, that thick. All it talks about is community and transparency. Talk to the community, be transparent. I get this report, and my fellow councillors mentioned, that the public can see it and find these things. Well, good luck. I spent 3 hours yesterday finding those 2 items in these reports, in these 2 attached documents. How the general public get to see that, I don't know. Has been mentioned by a couple of councillors. This is all about setting something for Metro and throwing the blank out again. We're regional and rural. You have all these documents, community strategic plans, the whole works and jerks about transparency, communicate with the community. You bring a report back to me to go out to the community, and you take the two things off the community. You give them, take them away their right. There have to be 10 of them to put a submission in, and you don't even want to tell neighbour C that neighbour B is going to have a big new house there in a couple of weeks' time. If that's being transparent and communicating with our community, then I've lost track of something altogether. I spoke at a workshop, the same tone. I cannot believe that it come to us in this form, and I would highly ask councillors to support Councillor Douglas's amendment to this item. Would anyone else like to speak on the matter? If not, I'll put the amended amended motion, sorry. All those in favour? Against? Document the votes. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. So that will be changed back to the original before it goes out to the public.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that. We move on to the next item. 2513, which is a submission to draft South Eastern Tableland Strategic Regional Integrated Transport Plan, Councillor Flannery. You'd like that title. And the recommendation is there in front of you. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Dodd, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Douglas. Any questions in regard to that?
Yes, it may require an amendment. The version I have kind of doesn't have a part B. It doesn't read well on my version.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've added the words that were missed, so it's delegate to the General Manager to make any minor amendments and lodge the submission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Got a mover and a seconder? Yes. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 2514 is a development application stats for January 2025. Receive and note the report. Mover, Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Mackie. Thank you. Any questions on that report? Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just more a comment than a question. I'm once again still concerned that 41 plus day number is quite high at 40% of our DAs. And wondering, or perhaps this is the question, what are we doing or what can we do to reduce that number down from 40%?
Pass it to the Director.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, you've just voted on a suite of changes to our policy settings that will enable us to bring that number down.
And as part of that policy, I know in the reading that I did, a lot of that is reliant on the applicant and defence of staff, and people don't know I defend all that often, but a lot of the trouble is caused by people putting plans and information in that's not quite correct. And what they might think is a simple fix to correct that is never that simple. So the education of the applicants putting in DAs is a big part of that process. So I thank staff for that part. Thank you for the question, Councillor Blackwell. Any other questions in regard to that report? I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Seem to be missing one. 2515. Community facility additions for the Animal Pound at 12 Glenslow Street, Young. The recommendation, councillors, is that we grant consent to the development application and advise those who have made written submission of the council's decision. Do I have a mover? Councillor Douglas, second. Councillor Davis. Do I have any questions or comments? Councillor
I'd just
Gallo.
like to ask the Director a couple of questions, if I may. I noticed that you refer to, we're using the standards as the pound standards. Just not sure why we're not using the boarding kennels standards, sorry. Why we're not using the DPI, RSPCA standards for pounds and animal shelters guidelines from 2014, which is got minimum standards for cage sizes and everything. I just feel if we're going to spend that much money, we probably should build it properly to those draft standards rather than boarding kennel standards, which are completely different. And maybe even if we could postpone or send the rangers to go and have a look at some really good facilities like Parks, Bathurst and Orange that have used those standards and built two great facilities.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have done those site visits, and particularly to Orange, and we've been inspired by what they've been able to do there. So we've used their documentation and design as part of the work that we're doing. So while it's not in here that we've explicitly used those standards, they have been part of the work that we have done to come up with, the design that you've got in front of you. Bearing in mind that this is a very cost-effective approach where we've looked to do the maximum value and get the best welfare outcome for our animals that are in the pound for the least cost.
Thank you for that. Any other questions in regard to that item? Councillor Dodd.
I have a question. It concerns me that we are building something in an area, I know it's industrial, but it's still quite close to residences.
Okay.
And they did make a reference to, in the past, it had been thought about maybe putting it out where the other ones are in Borough and Harden out to the, near the sewerage. And I just wondered, is this about cost? Or, like, I know it's supposed to be less than the noise standards, but barking dogs all night are really annoying. And what were the other options that we then went with this option?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we looked at a number of options, and this is the option that is most effective with the budget that we have in front of us. You'll be comforted to know that there's noise standards are there for a reason, to make sure that that use is appropriate in that zone, and we're well within the thresholds for appropriate noise. It's going to be a much better outcome because the dogs are going to be inside, so there's going to be substantially less noise, even with the additional numbers than there is currently.
So completely inside.
Enclosed.
There's no, right. Okay.
I'd imagine that it wouldn't make any more noise, the dogs barking, than a steelworks in a residential area, would it? I don't know. I may be wrong again. Any further comments in regard to that item? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 2516. There's a DA 2024-0092 subdivision 1 into 3 lots at 64 Bynalong Street, Young. The report's there, councillors, and the recommendation is to accept and agree with the applicant's application. We'll have a mover. Moved, Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Langford. Thank you. Do I have any questions in regard to that, DA? I don't. Then I'll put that to council. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Recorded. 2517 is DA 2023/0198. Change of use farm building to dwelling house at 655 Olympic Highway North, Young, on page 453. And the recommendation from council is that we approve the variation and grant consent. Do I have a mover and a second? Moved again, Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Douglas. Thank you. Any questions in regard to that item, councillors? No, then I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous again. Thank you. Take me up to item 2518 on page 536. Dual occupancy at 57 Currawong Street, Young. And the recommendation is to approve the variation there again and grant consent. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Foreman, thank you, and Councillor Davis, seconder. Any questions in regard to that, DA councillors? I'll put that to council. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes me over to 2519, which I believe is this the one, councillor? Okay. Councillor Davis is leaving the room. He's declared an interest in 2519, which is dual occupancy at 3 Emily Street, Young. And the report's there, and the recommendation is that council agree with the applicant's clause, approve the variation and grant consent. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Foreman. Seconded, Councillor Mackie. Thank you. Any questions in regard to this item, councillors? All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We'll get Councillor Davis back in the door. Here he comes. He'll probably shout the first round. Item 2520 on page 770 is 2024-0162, a dwelling house at 118 Farm Street, Boorowa. The recommendation is to grant consent to the development application. I have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Blackwell, Councillor Davis. Any questions in regard to that item, councillors? Not. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. We move to 2521 on page 848, I think it is. No, 2025-21, yep, draft debt recovery and financial hardship policy. The policy's there, councillors. Now what I'll do here, before we go on to this, councillors, from item 2521 to item 2529 are all draft policies to go out to the community. With your indulgence, I would like to move them as a block. If anyone's got any questions in any of those relevant draft policies, please come forward with it at any time. But if not, everyone's happy for that, I will now move those items as a block. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that to happen? Thank you, Councillor Foreman and Councillor Dodd. So on that note, I will now ask that the recommendations that we approve and accept those. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. So that takes us to item 2530, if I go back to where I am, which is submission to the review into council code of council meetings. Just catch up, we'll change items. There we are. 2530/30, and it's in regard to the submission to the review into council's code of council meeting practice. And the recommendation is to receive and note and endorse the submission. In short, do I have a mover and a second to start with? Councillor Blackwell, seconded. Councillor Dodd, thank you. Are there any questions in regard to that item, councillors?
Just
Councillor
a comment.
Blackwell.
Just a comment to thank the staff for putting this together. It's quite thorough and covers off a lot of the points that I think many of us were thinking and talking about when we first read the draft from the minister.
Thank you, Councillor Blackwell. I'd just make a couple of comments in regard to it, and again as well, thank the General Manager and his staff for going through this. I could talk at length about some of it. I'm not going to. Just to say that I'm disappointed with the Minister for Local Government's mind track with some of the suggested changes that were made. Some of the changes, if they were to be implemented, I believe would be a huge backward step for local government and how we conduct ourselves. And I'm happy to endorse the submission that staff have put together and been over it, and happy for it to go. So, do I have a mover and a seconder for that? I did. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. 2531, distribution of council financial assistance and sponsorship program, and the recommendation is there. I would like to move this with an amendment, which is, the wording may be very similar. I think I might have changed the word. Point 2 is that of the unallocated funds, $50,000 be internally restricted for the purpose of creating off-leash dog parks commencing in That would be my extra amendment to that recommendation.
I have an affirmative amendment. We have to vote on, okay.
Well, I need a seconder, so that's been moved and seconded. So if you wanted to change, you'd have to foreshadow something.
Look, I'll have to get the General Manager's advice through you, Mr Mayor. So I have an application for money for Margaret House. So if I were to move that as part 3, that'd be in direct opposite, wouldn't it? Because it's allocating the money elsewhere. So I've either got to foreshadow an alternative amendment. I'll speak against this and then short. So I'll foreshadow an alternative amendment for funding for Margaret House.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder. I'm happy to speak for it. This funding that's left over from the sponsorship and financial assistance program is something I've spoke about for a number of years, and it needs to be reduced, and I will move it in this year's budget back to $50,000 allocation to start with. This year, with $27,000 that was already allocated from previous commitments, that'll be reduced in the next financial year by $10,000 because the $10,000 commitment was a one-off. So that'll be $17,000 taken, and we currently can't give the money away. The problem we had in the past was the same groups seemed to be applying for this money, and some of them were licensed premises, and I spoke before about, I think it wasn't probably going to where it should go. But this year it's happened, and the money's been left over. And the strongest thing I think I've heard from this term of council in regard to needs from the community, why can't we have an off-leash dog park like Young? So it was mentioned to me earlier on, and I said, look, when some funding became available, I'll seriously look at it. Here is funding that's been allocated by council to go to community groups or community cause, and the current cause at the top of the list at the moment that this amount of funding could cover would be a start with the off-leash dog parks. So I would ask councillors to support me in that. A speaker against? Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I would like to speak against it. Not that I am against the off-leash dog park at all. However, Margaret House have made representations to me, and they weren't aware of the funding allocation at all. Hence, they didn't put a submission in. Look, I have three quotes from Margaret House totaling $11,841 to cover insurance for 2 bedrooms. So for those who are not aware, Margaret House provides accommodation to women and family who have no other alternative accommodation, particularly where they're in domestic situations that are basically unlivable for them and are being subject to abuse. So the invoices pertain to $3,000 for carpeting bedroom of a house, and then 2 insurance policies. So my alternative motion would be to allocate $11,381.37 to Margaret House. Whether we could divvy up the money.
Yep, I'll do it for you. On that note, Councillor Flannery, and thank you for that. And the amount off the top of my head was $11,300 something. The unused funding is $53,000 off the top of my head without going to the next page. I'm confident, well, I'd be probably pretty upset if we couldn't build an off-leash dog park in Harden for $40,000. I would be happy to adjust my amendment that the allocated funds, $40,000 of which be internally restricted for the purpose of creating an off-leash dog park in Harden, and the remaining funds to be allocated to Margaret House.
I'd second that.
Thank you very much. So all councillors up to what we're going to put up now? That's a lack of communication between Mayor and Deputy Mayor, obviously, but it just goes, we're too busy to talk sometimes. So are we all good, councillors? So moving to seconder, if anyone wants to speak in regard to that.
Can I just get that adjusted to, well, 11,381 or 11,400?
Just put 400.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's all good.
Would any other councillor like to speak in regard to that item? Now, we've had a bit of a talk about it. Councillor Backwell?
Yeah, I just want to fully endorse this. I think we managed to split the difference and fund 2 incredibly worthwhile and needed projects. The community of Harden have talked about off-lease dog parks for a while. Margaret House does really good work in the community here. So I think it's really good we're managing to use these funds appropriately and for the community.
Thank you. There's no other comments in regard to the matter. I'll move that item. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Dodd. I'm sorry, it's conflicted. My apologies. I wrote it down on the wrong page. I thought it was unusual, Councillor Dodd, not to be right on top of it. No. So we go to item 2532. Yep. Item 2532, councillors, please. I know, we'll just keep moving along. The Corwell Bridge, Tumbleton Creek reconstruction. There's a report there, councillors. My knowledge of this is receive a note of the report, of course, but when we replaced 4 bridges in the prior council and got the funding to do the 4 at once of the same design, this one may have been missed in the surveys, and it is the same design as those 4s that we had to replace before. So anyway, what's going on? There's a report there about the allocation and the allocation being moved around, and receive a note and adopt. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Move, Councillor Flannery. Seconded, Councillor Davis. Thank you. Anyone got any questions in regard to that? Councillor Flannery.
Well, consistent with your comments, do we have to go to tender on the design? Are we able to use the existing designs, noting the comments in it? And the reallocations of funding. So we're using the regional roads grant. We're just reallocating funding.
Just reallocating funding, but we're changing the budget.
Is there any other roads that are missing out that I've missed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it doesn't mean that some roads will miss out. It is a reallocation of the revenue funding to the bridge project because it's not eligible under the grant funding program, and using that grant funding to cover what revenue would have covered in the road project.
And as to design?
I'm not exactly sure at this stage how we'll approach that. We may have to go to tender, but obviously, yeah, as you're aware, we have existing designs that could be adapted to that site.
And how did it get missed?
Before his time.
Yeah.
General Manager.
I think it was before my time as well. I think you're referring to the 4 bridges. Yeah. That's where I orchestrated it to go out as one, and we got one company to do it all. So
one of those things at the time that happened. Any other questions in regard to that item? If not, I had a mover and a seconder. Yep. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Item 2533. I know a member of our community would be very excited to look at our page and find out that there's an update on Garibaldi Gully Bridge replacement update. The reports there, councillors, and the recommendations.
Can I move it with an amendment, please?
Moved with. Sorry, moved
with an amendment.
With amendment. What's your amendment? Sorry.
The amendment would be to consider alternative heavy vehicle access roads for Olympic Highway into Young, in particular Commons Road, Apps Lane, or accessing Donges Road. And even accessing Donges Road, which at the moment is a no-through road.
So we'll just read that to consider alternative heavy vehicle access roads into Young.
From Maringo, what roads? What's it?
Yes, Maringo.
Yeah, from Maringo.
Yeah.
From Maringo, including Commons Road, Apps Road, or accessing Donges Road. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's letter A.
Well, no, it's B. It's Councillor Flannery's motion with that in it.
So we've got a mover with the B in it.
Yep.
There, we got a seconder. I'll have-
Just a question. Is
I'll
sorry.
Sorry. Seconder, was that Councillor
I'll
Douglas?
second.
Seconded Councillor Douglas. Question, Councillor Foreman.
Is that a Part B? Is that a doable thing? Because aren't we just looking at? Just to please explain, are we looking at just the replacement update? So how does the Part B fit into that?
So through
I'll explain.
Oh, okay. Through you.
Councillor Flannery.
Well, if I can talk to my motion, and when council had a meeting in I don't remember if it was January or February now. When councillors met, we looked at what we'd like to achieve in this term of office, and one of my comments was or one of my desires is to try and get all the heavy vehicle freight out of Young and to what is now developing as a worthy industrial precinct on the western side of Young, accessing Millvale Road. And when I read this report, I thought it would be silly to build a $7 million bridge to carry B doubles when there might be ways of coming in and accessing Olympic Highway, and then ultimately, I believe there's a potential heavy vehicle access to come across the front of the abattoir, across Blackett Avenue, down closed Red Hill Tip, and around the back of Golf Club and into Young. So it's a 10-year vision, but in considering bringing heavy vehicles to spend $7 million into Young on a new bridge for what is soon going to be B triples, I think we should look at what other options there are. That's my view, because the next one will be the bridge across as a railway line. So we've actually got two bridges to consider. If we want to bring heavy vehicles in, I think we should actually get the trucks out of Young would be the best thing to do.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you. Any other councillor would like to speak against the motion now?
I'll express a concern more than an against that the bridge is still bad, even if you're not driving a B double, and the works arguably still need to be done for those of us who don't drive B doubles into town. The bridge is still, I think, not fit for purpose in that regard, even if you're not in a heavy vehicle. So I think pursuing an alternative kind of relegates that bridge to not getting fixed and not getting upgraded, which desperately it does need to, regardless of B double traffic or not. So I have a concern that if we start looking into alternatives, the fundamental work on Garibaldi Gully Bridge kind of gets put off indefinitely, and then we'll be back here in 3 years going, why did we not fix the Garibaldi Gully Bridge for them cars and caravans, which still would arguably be using it?
Thank you, councillor. So I'll take that as against, actually, probably more than any. But anyone else like to speak for or against? Please, Councillor Dodd.
I'm not speaking against it, but I too have concerns that I think that bridge needs to happen because a lot of people use it and it is quite dangerous. But I don't see that those two things, because one is a shorter term that's already, a lot of work has already been done, and the other thing is a much longer, much bigger process, and the bridge needs to be widened, whether or not it's suitable for heavy vehicles. Something needs to happen sooner rather than later there. So I'm happy to vote for that, noting that it doesn't actually say that instead of, although it says consider alternative heavy vehicle access roads, I still think we need to update that bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors, any comments? Right, a reply, Councillor Flannery, or Councillor Douglas, do you want to make comment?
I just have a question for the director.
Yep.
In the proposed design, is it designed for heavy vehicle access?
Yes, so council standard specifications for bridges typically cater for A doubles.
Is there a difference if it's not and we do an alternate route? Is there a price difference?
Yes, so there would be a price difference, and there may be other options available. For example, if we're not catering to the same vehicles, you could duplicate the bridge rather than replacing it.
So technically, we could do both
Yes.
if we were
yes.
in the money.
Yes, and we can do both. In any case, we can still investigate the alternative route that Councillor Flannery is talking about whilst progressing the bridge replacement.
Thank you for that.
Would Councillor Flannery consider?
Councillor Flannery, sorry.
Sorry. Would Councillor Flannery consider adjusting his amendment to say to investigate rather than to consider?
Yes, I'm happy with that.
In which case, I think I can support the changed wording.
Councillor Flannery, would you like a right of reply?
Yes, look, I agree that Garibaldi Gully bridge is not good. It's a lot worse when there's a bloody truck there or the truck's already decided to come over. But I don't think they're conflicting with each other. We're looking at it. There's land, Garibaldi Gully for heavy vehicle access requires land acquisition. There's heritage issues. I don't think it's going to happen anytime quickly if we're going to continue it as a heavy vehicle route.
Thank you. On that matter, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 1231, 25/34. On page 1054. Harden to Burrawa Pipeline Project Update. The report is there. And the recommendation
I'd like to move that.
is there. We've got moved by Councillor Blackwell, seconded by Councillor Mackie. The two Burrawa hands, thank you. So, receive a note. Would you like to speak, Councillor Blackwell?
I have many questions. So you could
Probably should ask them before. Okay,
I will ask them now. So, do we have a new updated timeline on the overall project now that this is into us here, or is that still the same as it was last time this came before us?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent of this report is to provide the draft review of environmental factors to provide the community with some more details about the project. The timeline remains very much the same in that the REF and detailed design will be completed by the 30th of June, and that will allow council to seek further funding for the construction of the project.
Thank you. That answers my next question, but I have one more or a few more. So in the report, in the very on page, 1054, you make note that prior to finalisation of the REF, we will consult with the Aboriginal Land Council in relation to cultural heritage. Question is, why have we not begun to reach out to them already? Like, if there are going to be significant hurdles in that, it could take us quite a length of time. And so the question is essentially, have we already begun to reach out to them? And if not, why not?
So the process that's been undertaken so far for the REF is based on the due diligence process. So direct consultation isn't required under that process. However, as an additional step before finalising the REF, we will consult with the Lands Council.
Sorry, I'm not quite sure that answers the question. Was why I get it's not required, why we haven't considered consulting with them earlier.
Oh, no, so absolutely we've considered it. However, at this stage, we're still doing some other design refinements. Like we don't have the completed concept design, for example, and that would be a really useful thing to take to them to give them more information about, what specifically we're doing in each part of the project.
Thanks. On pages 1170 and 1171, there's a lot of updates around preferred times to construct works around flora and fauna, breeding and flowering and seeding and things like that. There's just a slight, I guess, issue question I had that on, I think it's page 1170, it mentions that we should avoid works during essentially September to May. And then 1171 says we shouldn't do works in June to January. There are no other months left in the year if you don't do works in those months. So the question is, when are we going to do works if we can't do works in June to January or September to May, unless there's a magical 13th month I've forgotten about in the middle there?
Yeah, good point. Look, it is where practicable, and it is dependent on where specific species occur in I believe you're referring to the Durango TSR segment. And there's definitely more work required there, consulting with LLS and the department about how to appropriately mitigate in that area, because council has limited information about what's on that site. Again, that's a further piece of consultation to make sure that we're scheduling the work in the best way.
Yeah, just one or couple more questions. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've got a few here. Do we have a sense on, obviously it's kind of the pipeline's mirrored to match the road corridor for a fair chunk of the way from Harden to Burrawa. Do we have a sense on what side of the road we're thinking of putting it?
No, again, that comes down to finalising the design. It'll change depending on what segment, and that will largely be done to reduce the impact on remnant vegetation at the roadside, alongside using different construction techniques such as underboring, either to avoid damaging the road itself or vegetation or other features on the surface.
Yeah, and just one final question. Just to get, you may have said it already, so sorry if I'm making you repeat yourself. At what point should we get that detailed design and kind of costings estimate?
Yeah, so that will be complete by the 30th of June, and we'll provide that to council as soon as we have it.
Thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one
Councillor
question? YAS was successful with their funding for water very quickly. What's your feeling about the sort of money out there supporting this sort of pipeline for a small community?
So there is definitely funding out there, particularly some of the funding that YAS received under the National Water Grid Fund. That's definitely a fund that we're looking at. It's not necessarily a quick process. I note that YAS had a few attempts before they actually got the funding. But yes, there definitely does seem to be money out there. It's just a matter of getting through the process.
And with the land acquisition, is that wherever it touches private land, or is it because it's an essential pipeline? Is most of it? Well, yeah, compulsory acquisition, but is that what it is necessarily, or because it's an essential, resource?
Yeah. So
Does it always have to be acquired if it goes across the private land?
So it can either be, well, it needs to be acquired in some way. Usually it's an easement acquired over the land. The current concept design mostly uses the road corridor, and that minimises the amount of land that council would have to acquire to build the pipeline. However, there are some areas where it's unavoidable. For example, the starting point near the Harden Balance Tank. The Harden Balance Tank is on private land. So council would need to purchase land between there and the road corridor.
Thank you.
And just
Plenary.
to Councillor Blackwell's question, was identify which side of the road it's going on. Well, both sides of the. Currently, the practice is if the pipeline goes past a property, they then pay the access charge. What will the situation be there?
The intent of the the funding we've received from the state government is that it is a trunk main from Harden to Burrawa, and that it wouldn't supply customers on the route. However, we will look into options in that.
Look, I must admit, because I didn't have the attachment open, I missed some of the issues on the environmental. I was trying to look them up while Councillor Blackwell was speaking. Are there any of the environmental factors that you regard as significant?
No significant impacts on the environment. We have several mitigation measures in there to avoid or mitigate impacts. For example, as you yourself have pointed out before, Councillor Flannery, We know there's box gum woodland in the road corridor. We'll avoid impact on those pieces of remnant vegetation either by selecting the route to avoid it or using methods such as underboring to avoid surface disturbance.
Thank you for that, Director. Any other questions in regard to that item? If there's not, I had a move in a second. Yep. I'll put that item, councillors. All those in favour? Thank you. And yes, there's some work to be done there yet. Item 2535, Landfill Consolidation and Environmental Improvements Grant Program. There's a report there, councillors, and the recommendation is that we receive and note the report, adopt the proposed projects in Table 1 of this report for a funding application under the Landfill Consolidation and Environmental Improvement Grants Program. Do I have a mover? Councillor Flannery with a question, seconded Councillor Davies. Councillor Flannery.
Thank you. My understanding is that the former Gaylong landfill was capped, but the remediation process was never fully completed. Do you have any knowledge of the landfill there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I was not aware that the process at Gaylong wasn't completed, so I'll look into it.
When does this have to be in by?
On the 21st of March.
Done? You're right.
Well, that to look into it. Look, I've got, to the extent that I don't know what's actually got to happen, but we offered our services to help complete the remediation works. My father offered them when he was on council. I reiterated the offer. I did it again. I'm pretty sure the works had never been completed, but I don't believe they're overly significant, but it was meant to be covered with additional topsoil and planted out. And I haven't been there for a few months, but I do go there reasonably regularly, and it's never occurred, so it probably should be investigated and perhaps added to the list in case an audit ever occurs. And Burwa isn't in a position to have any additional funding. I think we actually had a funding shortfall there. There's no way we can recapture some of that revenue that we had to contribute.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, for the work already completed at Burwa, we can't recoup that. This is for new work.
Okay, well, if the director could investigate if there's any work required at Gaylong.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do we have any other questions in regard to that item? No, I'll put that item then. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Next item is 2536, Young Stormwater Trunk Main Update. And there's a report there, councillors, says receive and note. We'll have a mover. Councillor Mackie, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Blackwell. Anyone like to talk about that? I will. I'll draw your attention to the last paragraph, just above the bold writing of attachments. The tender documents were released to the market on Thursday, the 20th of February, 2025. That's a date that this particular council has been waiting for about 8 years. Staff will be pleased that I might get off their back a bit now in regard to that matter, but it's a big step forward into a project that's been a long time coming, seeking funding and getting the works done, and thank you to staff, and now we await the tenders and go from there. So, and there's no other comments. I'll put that.
Just one quick comment was to thank the staff for releasing us from discussing the word imminently ever again.
They knew I meant what I said, councillor. Yeah. All those in.
Just a question.
It's just
the cable. Why did it take 6 months to locate the cable?
So we had a similar issue with the water main project in Young. unfortunately, for something as sensitive as a fibre optic cable, we really need the asset owner to be there and help us to locate it, especially when it doesn't have all the required location, like the tracer wire and everything isn't detectable by us. Whether or not it was there, I'm not sure, but we couldn't detect that piece of equipment ourselves. We required their assistance, and it unfortunately took some time for that to happen.
When you say we couldn't detect it because we don't have the gear, because we don't have the personnel?
No, it's no. So we have appropriately trained personnel. We have the detection equipment, but we just couldn't detect that particular piece of infrastructure.
Is there other pieces of infrastructure that will affect future works that we're...
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, the issue that we have, if we actually break it, we're held liable. So we have to go through the process where they say it's where it is until we have their sign off, and we have been challenged and taken to court over touching someone else's, even though we did everything that the director said. So we can't move forward unless they say where it is.
Seems like an incredible delay.
It was a frustrating delay. There's no doubt it was, but hopefully the outcome will make up for that in case something was to happen. But yeah, I share your frustration. So all those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. We go to item 2337. I don't know why it's 23 now. It's been 25, but I'll call it 2327. GWCC service level agreement. Reports there, councillors, and the recommendation is to receive a note to have a mover and a seconder. Moved, Councillor Mackie, seconded, Councillor Davis. Thank you. Any commentary around that item?
Just one
Councillor Blackwell.
question. Is there anything in the agreement that would either affect or negatively impact Burrawa joining Golden Fields Water in terms of supply, pricing, anything at all?
Yeah, it says no Irish people to be served.
Well, God help us there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no.
Thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. It takes me back to item, guess what, 25/38. Capital Works report. And the recommendation is to receive and note the report. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved, Councillor Dodd, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Davis, thank you. Any questions in regard to the Capital Works report, councillors?
A few questions through you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Flannery.
Friend Park Tennis Court and lighting, Newell Gaylong. So there's an allocation of 200,000. So a little bit of background. Gaylong have been, they will by the end of this financial year have 800,000 in their VPA fund. I think they've probably spent 30,000 on consultants for design of a park. Actually, I think there might be two lots of 30,000, about 60,000. They have struggled to spend their VPA money because every time they do, there seems to be a land claim, which included Friends Park. Now, Friends Park, or it's Friend Park, sorry, Friend Park was donated to the community by the Friend family, who owned Bobra Station for, I think, over 100 years. And when the money had to be transferred from Limestone Park because of a land claim to Friend Park, they were then advised there was a land claim on Friend Park, which seemed odd because it was privately gifted. When I made an investigation, when I asked questions about it, I was advised that it would pertain to a corner of a tennis court. So I moved at the Gaylong VPA meeting, the Gaylong Progress Association, that they used VPA funds to get a survey done, because I thought it'll take 6 months to get council to get a survey done. In fact, I think it took us over a year for building at Harden. They did that. The survey's been completed. I was advised a couple of days ago that it's actually a road corridor that part of the tennis courts were built on. So, and it was, I'm guessing, a green road because it's never actually been a road. My question would be, what has to be done to get Crown Roads to hand the road corridor to the community. It has always been a tennis court. I'm 58 years young. It's been tennis courts in all of my life. It's been, to the extent that part of those tennis courts were built on a road corridor, I assume it has to be detailed that they have been in community use for all of that time. But we will need to be proactive on this. Otherwise, they will have nowhere to spend their money, quite literally.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. Part of the, following the survey, we can confirm that part of the tennis courts is on a road reserve. Part of it is on another Crown parcel. It's a complex environment, trying to resolve Crown land issues both on the road corridor and on the adjoining reserve. However, we're working through the process with Crown Lands.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we have a report back to the next council that actually details, now that it's been surveyed, we'll know the area and what the path forward is for the Gaylong community, please?
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, and for the update on the history of it. And I think he's cribbed a couple of years on his birth, but anyway. We had a move and a second. All those in favour?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I've got Councillor Blackwell question.
I have some questions. In the completed projects section, obviously we've done some work on Reeds Flat Road and Frogmore Road. I don't know whether I don't think, Director, you came out to the barbecue the other week, but the road there has deteriorated again quite significantly on the way into Reeds Flat. Just wondering if there's perhaps, do we need to go out and look at that again and see what repairs need to be made in future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can reassess the condition of that road.
And same with, of course, the perennial Wickham Lane in Young. I was on there last week and started off with a jug of milk from Woolworths and ended up with a jug of butter. So perhaps we can come back and revisit that as well, because definitely the road there is it's a perennial problem, I know, but definitely if we can have a look at that again sometime soon, I think people would be very happy with that.
Yes, and absolutely, there's further work planned on Wickham Lane.
Just for new councillors who are not so new now, in regard to Wickham Lane, it was made a #1 priority by the last council. The next lot of funding that comes along, which will have to be significant, but the former council all agreed that that would be the #1 project for Hilltops Council when the funding was available. So a bit of an update there for councillors who are unaware of that. Any further questions in regard to this report?
I have a few more questions. On page 1329, details of Kenya Road resheeting and Campbellfields Road resheeting. Which areas are still outstanding? I've got a couple of other questions.
I won't cut you off.
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't have the specifics of which areas have been done and which areas have not, so I can report back.
Okay, thank you. Mines Road is listed for funding. I'm informed by a landholder out there that they did work to Mines Road last year when it was wet, became untrafficable, and they did a significant portion of work themselves to be able to get in and out. What further work is proposed for Mines Road? Because I think that they said, can they be given their money back?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have to take that on notice as to what work is planned for Mines Road.
I'll probably get a few more for you on notice. Cunningar Road, details of what work is occurring there. Moppy Road, I think, is all the work complete? Well, I know it is from your text. Moppy Road work's all complete. And if you could note the additional areas of pavement for next year. I think on the list, Heathfield Road is missed. No, go through it.
It's the next report.
Yeah, next report. If I could get responses on those roads, please.
Okay, all good. Councillor Langford.
Duncan, just a couple of things. Of course, Councillor Flannery was referring to his age. A little bit concerned about the young cemetery at my age. Only 8% of the budget's been expended. $430,000 allocated. Work's continuing on the investigation and the design of the new cemetery. I think from memory, the original quote or figure that was bandied around was around 1.6 million. I don't believe it'll probably be able to be done for that. Any further update on that at this stage?
So the Young Cemetery, I believe, public exhibition of the DA closed on Friday last week. And the planners are considering the submissions. They've been provided to our consultant for response.
Right, thank you. Got it, somewhere to go.
That's you, okay. Any other councillors got any other questions in regard to that report? No. The only comment I'd make is Moppity Road's had a mozza spent on it. All those in favour of that report? Unanimous, thank you. Sorry, just a private joke between the mayor and deputy mayor, yeah. Yeah. Item 2539 is the operational works report. Recommendation that we receive and note the information.
And can I move an amendment that Part B, that council investigate the costings on purchase of a mini excavator and man and trailer to use for ongoing culvert repair
Okay, we just have
or clean out.
an amendment put there, added to the recommendation, which will then go up as the motion. So that's that there.
Mini excavator, vehicle and trailer and staff for ongoing culvert clean outs.
I'm very happy to second that. So on that note, Councillor Flannery, would you like to speak to that?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, one of the big problems with our unsealed roads is the culverts and the fact that they're not cleaned out and water has nowhere else to go but over the road. I think we need to look at this as a priority because I think ultimately it's going to save us money in road repairs. So unless we actually put our mind to it and put budgetary money to it, we're going to keep dealing with the same problems year in, year out.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, and yeah, I concur with your thoughts, and very relevant that the storm in Howden Murrumbara recently and the problems that was caused by culverts naturally getting blocked and the overflow from there. So I'm happy to support that. Does anyone else like to speak on that matter? If not, I'll
No, but
Councillor Blackwell.
I do have a question for staff. Is that for later or for?
Yep, no.
Just on the report, I don't see Victoria Street and Young on the list of works completed or works scheduled. I know a number of residents and myself have raised it as an issue since October. I know council staff came out and inspected the road and declared the issue resolved, which, you know, perhaps we can quibble over the word resolved in that instance, but wanted to know if there's an update on that street, the unsealed section that is from the tip.
Yes. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm aware of the complaints about Victoria Street. And I'm just stretching my memory a bit. But yes, some work was done. But I'll confirm exactly what the plans are.
Thank you.
Any other questions,
couple of
Councillor
questions.
Flannery?
On the report, it notes Colenso Road. There's a number of roads that have been completed that have been heavily impacted by the storm damage. Colenso Road being one of them. I think Fairview Road's another. Linwood's listed for work. So the question is, what is the likely time frame for funding under the disaster relief? That's one question. I believe Heathfield Road's missing from the report altogether. I'll just note that. And there's the two Garama roads, I think, that listed are the same. There's Garama and Garama. But could we be advised of the nature of the claim and the extent of it for the storm damage?
Just on that note then, before the Director answers that matter, I raised that matter with the Minister in regard to the lag between being declared a disaster area and the funding, because it can take some time, and I reminded him that local government, we didn't have a lot of unrestricted cash to throw around. The three representatives there from New South Wales Reconstruction Authority were very helpful and reassured me that they would work closely, because I mentioned, heaven forbid, Transport for New South Wales and Public Works, and they will continually work with them and communicate with them to ensure that the funding and the necessary works are approved as quick as possible. But a timeline, I can't give you that, but I can give you the reassurance of New South Wales Reconstruction Authority that they will work with Council to make sure that Transport for New South Wales and Public Works are onto this. Have you got any to add, Director?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to note that this works report, given the timing for Council, was built before we had a full picture of the damage. So there will be activities on the road that have come about because of the storm damage that aren't reflected in this report.
On the statement of claim, or however it's listed, do you put a schedule of claims in before you do the work and then it has to be approved, or how does the actual process work?
Yeah, so the process works in order to get the declaration, we needed to submit a claim demonstrating that we'd reached a financial threshold of damage. Then we've commenced repairs, I should say, and we claim for that work as we progress, essentially.
So on a road like Moppity Road and the Burley Griffin Way, there's been significant scouring of the drainage of the road. So there's no, I wouldn't say no, but the scouring of a drainage is far more severe than the actual damage to the top of the road. But unless we get gabion rock or aggregate in there, it's going to continue to erode the side and undercut. Are we able to claim road verge work where gabion rock needs to be put in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we are. Most of the damage was drainage, not road surface damage, and that's what we'll be claiming.
Okay.
I believe I read a report where there was 443 instances reported, and the majority of them was actually what you just said, rather than actually on the road, culverts and drainage. So yeah.
Can
All right,
I ask
Councillor
a
Mackie.
question? With the hailstorm that we got in Brewer, which was, have you looked at any of the, I'm just thinking of the grandstand in Brewer, looked at the roofing, is that with the hail? Because I know my insurance people are saying that I will probably get a new roof. So it just might be a bit fortuitous that it might have a bit of damage on it.
We'll take that on notice, but we'll ensure that is looked at.
Thank you. Any other questions in regard to that report? No? Okay, I'll put the operational report. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. Next item on our agenda is 2540 media releases of local government circulars. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Douglas. Seconded, Councillor Langford. All those in favour? Councillors. Item 2541, committee report requiring no action. Now, I don't know what other councillors got. I might handle the general manager here, but there was the incorrect paperwork was initially tagged with that, unfortunately.
It has been updated,
It's
Mr.
been
Mayor,
updated and corrected,
in
so,
the
yep.
documents, yes.
All right, thank you. So do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved, Councillor Doug, seconded, Councillor Flannery. All those in favour? Thank you. Takes me to 2542, which is the action summary report. The recommendation of note the status of the action plan. Mover and a seconder. Moved Councillor Blackwell, seconded Councillor Douglas. Thank you. Questions in regard to this report? No. Oh, Councillor Flannery,
No, I was thinking of magnifying glass there.
get your microphone on.
I don't even know what it is. What bloody number is that? Sorry, but can't read that to work out what number it is.
Councillor Flannery, if you're looking at that, it's the draft data breach policy. Is that that's the page you're looking at?
No, it's an encroachment issue reserve. Jugiong. Where are we up to with the Jugiong cemetery? So it's got consultation continuing. So where is the consultation up to? How many people are we consulting with, and when do we expect a resolution?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll pass to the Director of Corporate and Community.
Through the Mayor, consultation with the landowners is still ongoing to try and come up with a resolution. However, I'd be reluctant to discuss that in an open forum.
So I'm assuming the landholders not being obliging.
We are in discussions with the landholder,
I can read that.
but that's what we can say. We can have in confidential. We can provide you with more information.
Right. Okay. The next item, is it complete, the lawn cemetery policy? I mean, when they're put out on display, are they complete?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the policy that you voted tonight is put out on public exhibition, and that will come back to you for endorsement. If there's no submissions, it will be adopted. If there are submissions,
I'm being a bit technical. There's a number of items here that are listed as complete just because they've been.
they are complete as far as we've brought the policy to you, but the policy, the adoption of the policy, should no submissions, the policy will be adopted and they are complete.
Yeah, I beg to differ. I mean, through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that something's complete until we've adopted the policy. Just because you've brought it to council, it's not actually complete.
We can modify it. It's complete as our work is complete. That if there is submissions, we bring a report back. If there are no submissions, you won't see the report again because it has been adopted because of the motion.
Once it goes out draft and it comes back, and if we're happy with it, it's then adopted. But it's complete at the point of adoption.
So it's a matter of terminology in the report. Agreed? Yeah, agreed. Any other questions in regard to the action summary report? If not, I'll put that. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. We go to 2543, questions on notice. Councillor Blackwell had a couple of questions and responses are there. The recommendation to receive and note the questions and responses. Do I have a mover? Councillor Blackwell, seconder. Councillor Foreman, thank you. All those in favour?
Can I just
sorry.
I'd just like to make a comment in relation to Wickham's Lane. When you look at Wickham's Lane on Google Earth, the number of dwellings on that road are significant. And dare I say it, because council voted, the previous council voted to approve a DA where it would effectively mean the road, there's no DA contributions. I've just got a mental blank at the moment, but the road we approved, there are no DA developer contributions on it. And dare I say, this would have been the conversion of a lot of old orchards into under a bit of a background to residential dwellings. And at the end of the day, council gets left footing the bill where we don't adequately fund subdivisions. So to a point here, if we are going to allow backdoor subdivisions, we need to make sure we get developer contributions, otherwise we foot the bill.
Again, councillor, I agree to the point where we actually changed, the director can speak if he likes, we actually changed how we would collect those fees, not that long ago in a council meeting, and I'll let the director explain if you like.
Yes, through you, Madam, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yes, indeed, we made a change to the young contributions plan, so it was rescinded to address that issue. There are two things on the horizon that will fundamentally address that. One is that we are going to be updating our whole contributions regime, and that will be the opportunity to have a new work schedule and for those things to be factored into that works program. Secondly, we've engaged a consultant rural land study, and that will deal with the fundamental issue of ensuring we've got the right land use settings so that we're allowing rural residential development where it's not encroaching on productive land, getting that balance right.
Thank you. Director, any other questions in regard to that matter? I'll put that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Takes us along to 2544 as a motion on a report on the progress and cost of a demerger poll. Was put there by Councillor Gallo, and the motion is that a council be provided with a report detailing the process to undertake a demerger poll and the estimated costs associated with the process. I would imagine that Councillor Gallo would like to move that.
Yes, I would.
Happy to second it. Councillor Gallo, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I just feel that the residents of Hardin are on my doorstep quite often, and I think if we can look at the bigger picture and get a costings as to whether it is worthwhile or it isn't, I think that may help the residents.
Thank you, councillor. Would anyone like to speak against the motion?
Look,
Councillor Foreman.
I'll just briefly say, you know, look, a decision was made in 2016, which we're coming up to 9 years now, and we need to own that decision and make it work for the community, is what I will say to that. And in regards to the motion, I think we all here understand, and I think the community that's interested understands that the cost involved in an extensive business case, educating the public, and all the steps that you have to go through to achieve a demerger, it would be there's never an exact amount when I research it actually, but it's in the hundreds of thousands and possibly into the millions of dollars. And it is an extensive upheaval. And I will also add, I understand where Councillor Gallo was coming from with this, but, you know, look, I just think we sit in this room month after month to take this community forward, the Hilltops community, and I just think that we have to make that decision in 2016 work for the community, and I think that's what we're all really working so hard to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Anyone else like to speak for the motion?
Yes. Look, I am not in favour of demerging in the slightest, but I think it's important that we at least the people have the information as to the cost. I think the cost will be higher than we're willing to pay as a council. So I'd be unlikely to support moving towards a poll, but I think people want the information, and if the general manager agrees the costs are not too high to do this work, which I'll perhaps ask him that as a question, then, you know, I'd be for finding out the answers.
Through Mr. Mayor, to answer that, should the motion get up, I'll prepare a report detailing what is required in relation to the poll and the costs. I know I've talked about anecdotal costs before, but this is a motion that I will act upon to bring before council.
The general manager's role is to implement resolutions of council. Just on that, to clarify that point. So we had to speak for, against. Speaker for. Anyone else speak against the motion? No? Okay. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Just keep your hands up, please, councillors, till we go around the table.
Gallo,
Against? That motion is carried. We've got another motion from Councillor Gallo, the establishment of a companion animal advisory committee. A report's been put there, and the motion is a companion animal advisory committee be established in the manner outlined below. I believe Councillor Gallo will move her motion. Again, I'm happy to second that. And would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor?
Yes, I just believe that it would be great to have a companion animal advisory committee that's made up as per the recommendation. It will give the residents of Hilltops a bit of input into helping make some decisions, i.e. off-leash areas, dogs day out, microchipping days, and have some input into feral animal management and cat management within the area, which we can all agree we've got some big issues there.
Thank you, Councillor. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Given that's a no, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? Councillor Nuggets against. That motion is also carried. We'll have to ask a great friend Dougie to please leave us at this stage. Good night, Doug. Dealt with in closed.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. During the confidential session, Council resolved at 15.2-25/47 Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, ARIC, proposed new independent member and chair. Council resolved to receive and note the report, approve the appointment of the recommended applicant as the external independent member of ARIC, and approve the appointment of the recommended chair. At report 15.3-25/48, commencement of section 713, sale of land for unpaid rates and charges. Council resolved to appropriately undertake the sale of land and appoint the necessary people to undertake that sale. Council also resolved at 15.4-23/49, proposed lease 314 Albury Street at Murrumbara, the Selwell building, to appoint a real estate agent exclusively to market the property, and if after 3 months the property is not leased, to lease that property to the local Rotary for the peppercorn lease, and then secondly that Council authorise the General Manager complete the execution of the lease in accordance with the outlined process. At report 15.5-25/50 Hilltops Council Scholarship Scheme Committee membership, Council resolved to accept all the nominations that were presented, including one late, and appoint two council community representatives, and to amend the committee terms of reference to require the minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3 community representatives, and appoint 3 councillors to the committee, being Councillor Douglas, Councillor Blackwell and Councillor Foreman. Council also resolved at report 15.6-25/51 Borowa Gaylong Rail Trail Oversight Committee. Council appoint the 5 representatives to that committee who had applied, being Martin Corcoran, Judy Suter, Nikki Burton-Taylor, Jim Ryan and Paul Young. At 15.7-25/52 Rye Park Enhancement Fund Committee, that Council accepted all the nominations, including the late nomination, and appoint the 2 community representatives to the committee as outlined. I will state at this point, if there is an unsuccessful candidate, we await to announce the names of those people as appropriate process. At 15.8, report -25/53, notice of intention and orders pertaining to nominated premises in Harden. Council resolved to receive and note the reports as issued by the relevant authority in relation to compliance, delegate the ability to issue a notice of intention, to issue numerous orders to act upon or in relation to those properties, and issue a response to the government agency advising of its determination under Schedule 5, Part 8, Section 17(4) of the Act. At 15.9, expressions of interest for Gaylong Limestone Mine VPA Steering Committee. Council resolved to receive and note the report and appoint 2 community representatives to the Gaylong Limestone Mine VPA Steering Committee. And finally, at report 15.10-25/55, Young CBD Advertising. Council resolved to receive and note the report, enter negotiations with the advertiser that exists in relation to the advertising provision of street furniture in the Young CBD in accordance with Section 55, subsection 3(1) of the Local Government Act, due to the unavailability of competitive or reliable tenders, and C, delegate authority to the General Manager to execute all necessary documentation, extension options associated with this contract, and expend funds as required within current budgets. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. And just before I close the meeting, I'd just like to pass on my appreciation and thanks to all the councillors in the room. As we all were aware, we had a rather large business paper with a lot of reports and policies to go out. We will receive, and as we go forward, some papers that will be larger because of one factor, that we have X amount of policies and they have to be put out every 12 months to the community. So there was a bundle of 10 tonight. There will be more bundles of policies coming to go out on community consultation. So I thank you for how the meeting was handled tonight, the manner in which all councillors approached it. There was no matters deferred. All matters were dealt with. And I'll close the meeting now. And the meeting has been just under 3 hours. So I congratulate you all. Thank you and good night.